Good afternoon. Hope you're having a great day. As I mentioned to you last week, this week's Torah portion, we read more of the laws that pertain between man to man, woman to woman, and how we treat others as opposed to the spiritual laws of the Ten Commandments. And one of the laws the Torah tells us this parsha this week is that we shouldn't persecute or be mean to a widow and to an orphan. And then the verse says like this, because im ane sa'ane, if oppress you will oppress them. Tza'ok yitzak, they will cry to me. And shamoa eshma, here I will hear their cry. And the rabbis all talk about that. What's going on here? We never find a verse where the Torah repeats so many words. Ane sa'ane, if oppress you, oppress the widow and the orphan. Tza'ok yitzak, cry they will cry. And then Shema Eshma, here I will hear. Why is the Torah telling us these repetitive words? And the Kotzker Rebbe, whose yahrzeit was last week, a genius, a brilliant Chassidic master, says something very beautiful. And he says that what the Torah is telling us is like this, that when I hear the cry of the orphan and the widow, it's going to be double. Because the orphan and the widow say to myself, if my husband was here, if my wife was here, if my parent was here, people wouldn't treat me like this. They'd be kinder. They'd be gentler to me. And same being, if my husband or my wife were here, then, or my parent were here, then I would have someone to cry to, someone to put my shoulder down and to tell someone, if someone doesn't treat me well, I would be able to speak to them and say, look what happened. But I don't have that parent. I don't have that sibling to talk to. Says the Torah, when oppress you oppress, the oppression is double. Because you're oppressing them just as you would oppress someone else. And also, they have no one to turn to. And there's no one to protect them. And the same is when they cry, their cry will be a double pain. But I will hear twice. Because I will hear their pain in the regular. And then I will hear their pain because they have no one else to hear their pain. When I read this verse, it really made me think about the soldiers in the IDF who we lost. 244 soldiers just since we went into Gaza. And then so many soldiers on the day of October 7th. And I think about all the widows. So many widows who are pregnant and expecting and having babies where the fathers won't be there for day one to listen to the baby cry, to support the mother. I think about all these young kids going to school that are orphans. And the Torah warns us not to oppress them. The Torah warns us not to hurt them. But imagine if the Torah has to warn us not to hurt them, the reward for when we take care of them is also double, is also so much more powerful. And to see the way the Israeli public and Jews around the world have rallied around these orphans, around these widows, to nurture them, to shower them with love, with kindness, with gifts, with the things they need. I just saw an organization that was counting 40 widows who were having babies, and they were doing this fundraiser to make sure that they have all the things they need when the babies are born, that the father would probably end up buying for them and taking care of, that they should have it all. God says, here I will hear their cry, but here I will hear also of all those that do so much kindness and care for these people. And God rewards in a great way. You know, Sivan Rahav, some of you might follow her. She's an Israeli woman who's a reporter who does these inspirational stories. And many of these widows have been writing to her in the memory of their husbands. And I saw this woman, Chana, whose husband was Uriel Cohen, a remarkable man who died, who was killed in Gaza. And she speaks about how her husband was the light of every party, was the light of every celebration. It wasn't just, sometimes she said you give money, you give food to somebody, but sometimes you give the light of your face, the joy, the warmth, which is maybe greater. And that's what he had. He always lit people up with his joy, with his ambiance, with his warmth. And she says that tradition tells us when a person's in mourning, it's like a half a person. She lost her husband. But she said now she feels like a person and a half because she feels like her husband, his soul, is with her, and she feels like the whole nation of Israel is standing and supporting her. And that's the power of the Jewish people. God warns against hurting the orphan and the widow. But the Jewish people, not only aren't we hurting the orphan and the widow, but we're lifting them up. We're embracing them. We're hugging them. We're making them like our own family, because they truly are. Have an awesome